Hello, everybody. Chris Martinson here, and today we're going to be talking about finance and economics as part of Finance U. Remember, anything that you see in this video and all resources available at our websites or affiliated websites are not intended as or construed as financial advice. This is for educational purposes. Remember, if you have a financial decision, please consult a financial professional. We are not attorneys, we're not CPAs, we are not financial managers. As well, we do our best to be accurate, and everything we represent is as accurate as we know it to be. Now, let's turn to our program.
The problem is there's really attractive value stocks, and they're still going to have some volatility because whenever this bubble pops, there's going to be a lot of debt that has to be paid off, a lot of margin calls that are going to come, and investors are going to sell whatever they can sell to be able to cover those debts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Finance University. So glad to be back here with all you curious-minded people. And we're here with Paul Kiker of Kiker Wealth Management. Hey, Paul. Good to be back here with you again today.
Hi, Chris. Good to be back as well.
So where do we go? Lots of things happening. I've been, there's a couple of things that have been on my mind of late. So there's sort of macro things and there's sort of observations. So Paul, somebody that I know this is not a time a lot of people say you should be cautious because look at stocks exploding, look at digital currencies. There's all these things exploding upwards. But a good friend of mine who trained me said bubbles never end until you have what he called the final blow off top, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe this is it, or maybe the final blow off top is way out there in the future. But let me just tell you that like this is the one thing that catches me more than anything else, is this. So this is the German market here, the DAX, right? You can see these big candles spiking up here, but honestly, they would look a lot like the big candles that you would see spiking up. And by the way, these are just the ads that they give me. This isn't subliminal anything on my part. Nothing I can do about it. Here, maybe I can close that. There we go. So you got these three big, this green candles here. This is that huge, who knows what happened, what scared them, and they created all that easy liquidity, as you and I have talked about, that expressed itself through November like a freight train. But here we are again. And so the reason this is interesting to me is that Germany's in recession. Mm-hmm. Their banking system is undergoing cataclysms right now because of its exposure to commercial real estate. Doesn't look good. But more to the point, their most producing industries, these are energy intensive industries, glass, cement, steel, aluminum. Great Depression level, minus 23% year over year decline in output. I mean, this is like, what is even happening, right? Against that backdrop, higher highs and record highs, it's just
euphoric.
Right?
Yes.
And I just raise that because, it's just like maybe people can get a little distance from that. We're too invested in our sense of where the U.S. markets are and we have belief structures around it or it makes sense or something. But Germany, I'm having a hard time with that one.
Yeah. And again, Germany's one that just as it's not on our radar, I'm not following every little detail that takes place there. But I do know that by all accounts that they're in a recession, their industry's been gutted, but yet their markets are just rip-roaring higher. The question is, I always ask myself, why? What are investors thinking? Is it just this pure euphoria? Is like they're expecting that the central banks are going to slam rates to zero again? They're going to print money and bail them out. But there's a real disconnect there. And, maybe everybody's hoping that maybe those investors that are speculating in Germany are hoping the rest of the world is going to pull them out, right? And that this is the bottom and they're trying to front run it. But what happens if this is a blow-off top in the rest of the world and the rest of the world contracts, which makes their contraction even worse? That's a very speculative environment for these investors.
Yeah. Well, it's I can't explain it easily by what we'd call fundamental terms. So I just fit this into the under the aegis of central banks have just once again created another set of bubbles.
Yes.
It's what they do there. Can we be honest? The central banks are now serial bubble blowers. It's what they know how to do. And the cure for a bubble is another one. And that's what they've been doing since 2001-ish,
Yeah.
So it's just, it is the game. Now you got to play the game as it is, right? So I'm not here suggesting anything other than this is odd, and when we track it this way, and the backdrop of this, socially speaking, is that since 92.5% of all stocks are held in the U.S. in the top 10%, the top decile of households, this is really actually a social engineering experiment too, which is, hey, what results when you make and reward one class of people preferentially? And
Yes.
the answer is, I think people start to get a little spicy about this stuff. And we're starting to see that. We see that in the farmer revolts in Europe, but I think we're starting to see it here in the U.S. as well.
I agree, and I think it's something that's going to accelerate relatively quickly here in the U.S. as the deceit that's put out there. You can paper over the markets, but the further you're separating the upper class and eliminating the middle class, one of the things in the middle class in America is as long as you're staying middle class, right? What was the quote that I read? This is a period of time where markets are at all-time high. We've got this great narrative that we're going to have this soft landing, but Americans are still feeling very vulnerable, right? Like it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And the problem is, we're very wealthy to the rest of the world, but that vulnerability is because the middle class is not stable, right? Because if you make a mistake and fail in America right now, it's a long way down, right? Especially if you're middle upper class. And once you hit the bottom, it's much harder to recover yourself again. Work ethic is work ethic matters a lot. You'll be rewarded for work ethic and discipline and doing things the right way. But it's just not quite enough anymore. You've got to be connected. The closer you are to those centers of power, the better advantage you have at the expense of the rest of the American people.
Yeah, I had a theory about this way back in the day. I'm a big Second Amendment fan, and then Mr. Moore comes out. Michael Moore comes out with Bowling for Columbine, and he tries to explain it. And I was like, oh, Michael, you got this close. Because he noted that, look, here's Detroit, and here's Windsor, Canada. They're right across the lake from each other, drinking the same water, being exposed to the same TV shows, but the gun violence on one side is vastly higher than the other side. And I thought, great, because you've controlled for almost all the variables. The difference is that in Detroit, if you fall down that ladder, you get one hospital bill that's too much, you're out, And people generally, I don't believe that people are just violent all on their own. People who are violent tend to be out of any other option in their own mind. And so at any rate, I just thought, look, U.S. is highly Darwinistic. You fail, you're under the bridge. It's on you. Sorry, no help. And Canada at least has a social safety net. You can argue with whether that's an appropriate blah, blah, blah. But at least, in Europe too, like you can't fail the same way you can here, right? Because your collective tax burden actually goes into making sure that there's some sort of a safety net there. We don't have a safety net here. We don't have one.
No.
Right?
No. And if someone fails and then they get on the wrong side of the law, their taxes, their penalties, their fees, it's exorbitant, right? And they can't get out of it. And if the only thing that they can rely on is credit card debt, you're 22%. I mean, it's for the first time in many, many years, I've had some individuals clients come in and say, hey, look, I've got a kid that lost their job and they've got $120,000 in credit card debt at 22%, right? It's like, what do we do? There's not much you can do except for go through the bankruptcy system and, do it the right way, get a good attorney and hope that they can continue to afford the house that they're in. So I'm starting to see cracks at the edges again, and these are kind of the same things that you started to see in early late 2007, and the same things that you started to see in 1999, 2000, when the markets were doing one thing, but you're starting to see individuals that are just covered in debt, and if they're trying to dig themselves out, they just can't get out. Every mistake that they make, they've got 20 stones that gets in their backpack, and it makes it harder for them to carry the pace they were before.
It does. I'm going to pull up this chart because we're on the topic, so let's go there. That's a fine color. I'll use that one. Let's do this. So this is one of my favorite charts. We've talked about it before. This is total credit market debt outstanding, TCMDO, in the Federal Reserve System or the Fed system. This is Q3 2023, Paul. So 96.8 trillion. That's what 96,864 billion means. 96.8 trillion. So this is all debt. You know, sometimes we talk about federal debt at 34. That's a third of this story, right? What's the rest? Well, it's those people you just mentioned who are in debt. It's municipalities, households, corporations, all of it. Just debt, just debt. This isn't underfunded liabilities. That's a different, larger, more bizarre conversation to have. This is third quarter. I'll bet you by the fourth quarter, we're getting to the big round number triple digits when they finally update this series. Okay, so if you go out into the world, and BIS will tell you there's $313 trillion of debt in the world upon last count, global record. Well, that means the U.S. holds about a third of the total debt in the system. We're holding a third of it here in the U.S., but we're only like 5-6% of the world's population. So we're really levered up here. And the only way that levered up institutions, entities, individuals work is if you've got a good lock on a highly productive new thing you're about to go do, right? Leverage is a real beast when you spend on the wrong stuff, borrow and spend on the wrong stuff, right? You know.
Yes.
So I don't mind debt, right? You borrow to expand your restaurant. I'm happy. You buy for a new wakeboard boat, borrow for that, different outcome, right? So potentially. So this is part of the story. We are levered to the hilt.
We are. And that means the margin for error is much smaller. You know, a stumble can turn into a catastrophic event. As Mark Twain said, how do you go bankrupt? Slowly and then all at once. And that's the reason why it catches so many people off guard, is because, I think I can make ends meet. I think I can make ends meet. I think I can make ends meet. And another indication in our society, you know, the debt levels and just the bifurcated society as far as income levels, is the theft in America right now. I mean, to me, that's an indication of people that in the moral decay, you know, some people are going to steal just because that's what they're going to do. I don't think that's the large majority of people. Other people are doing it because they either feel entitled to it because that's what they've been taught, or because they're desperate to try to make ends meet, because they get on social media, they get on television, they hear the president's administration come out and talk about how wonderful everything is. Well, I'm not participating, so now I've got to, you know, be a part of that. So it's sad. It really is.
Yeah. So speaking of all the theft that's going on out there, fear not. The FBI, Paul, is on it. They're on it. And if you haven't seen this, this was for my subscribers. I do these scouting reports, and this was in yesterday's scouting report, which I just couldn't resist, where the FBI tweets a post, a comment, and says, higher prices, dangerous products, and closing businesses. These are just some of the impacts of organized retail theft. And then to demonstrate organized retail theft, they must have had the Gemini Google AI program say, show me organized retail theft. And it picked two white gals in Burberry outfits. And I'm like, no, FBI. These are not the people you're looking for.
No.
I'm highly confident that it's not the two young white girls in Burberry clothing that are your organized retail theft that you're.
Hey, I thought that post was wonderful, Chris. When I saw that, all I could think was trust fund child, right? Like, that's a classic picture of a trust fund child there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, anyway, it's just a sign of the times, but you know, to the point that sort of coalesces around this, which is, you know, the twin pillars of a stable society are empathy and compassion and fairness. Right. And so that's that fairness. It's like, when that begins to break down, people lose the thread and they go, well, listen, whole system's rigged against me. Why shouldn't I steal some stuff? Right. This is just how it goes, you know?
Right.
So.
Yeah. And that's where the societal collapse ultimately comes from, because you can't build, America wasn't built on stealing and deceitfulness. And I mean, there's people that will claim that it is, but the reality is, the golden age of America and what built the foundation for where we are now was just scales and doing business, honesty, and punishment for those who stole, right? I think in 2008 collapse, nobody went to jail. From what I understand, that's the first time of any major event throughout history where nobody went to jail. I mean, there was some local bankers around here that went to jail, but not on a major level. So it seems to be we're in a society today where if you have deep enough pockets to where you can pay off the right people, then you're above the law. And the worst part about that is that incentivizes you to try to monopolize your environment, and you just don't have solid pillars for our economy to hold up, to stay upon. Now, we don't know exactly when that collapse comes, but the reality is these euphoric market moves like this is a period of grace for those investors that are participating in it and are courageous enough to see the risk of the underlying economy and where this has unfolded throughout history, to take some of these profits now and reposition their portfolio to make sure that they're building a solid foundation for themselves individually so that they can stand when everything else comes apart, and then use the resources that they have set aside from a long-term point of view to turn into opportunity.
Yeah, well, indeed, and this is where you and I align pretty closely, which is, you've got a farm.
Yes,
I've got a farm, and I'm a big believer in sort of the parables, right? Like the ant and the grasshopper. Like I like storing food. It's a fun little hobby. I do it. I like growing food. I think that's appropriate. I ended all of my COVID coverage at the beginning with one of two things. Either it didn't have to be this way, which I would tighten up now to say it shouldn't be this way, right? It shouldn't be that we have organized corruption and theft. And if I could advise the FBI, I'd say, you're right. Organized crime is a problem. It's just not, their names don't end in vowels necessarily. It's the crew at the SEC and out there, and who aren't regulating, and the Congress people and all that. It's a different, in Wall Street, so a different problem. But as well, we've got to consider, how are we going to continue our path here with as little issue as possible for people. So I said plant a garden. So that was the other thing I ended with, right? And so I do think and it's important. I really believe in that basic resiliency. Financial freedom's this cornerstone of that. That's why I like doing what I'm doing. I want to help people be safe as possible. But from that foundation, you've got to use that wisely to help the others around you. And that begins by helping yourself first, right? Oxygen mask goes on you first, then your child. Funniest thing I ever saw was somebody said, I think it was a comedian said, so when you put your own oxygen mask on and you got two kids sitting next to you, got your two kids with you, he's like, pick carefully because the other one will remember who you picked.
That's really good. I can say for sure that if you were to ask all three of our kids, they would claim that we would pick the youngest one first. They fully believe that. But
all right,
could be. One thing about the situation we're in is if you look back through history, there's always warning signs, right? And we call them birth pains. So my biggest concern, Chris, is when you stand back and look at the big picture, because it's so easy to get sucked into the day-to-day activity. Let's look just back over the past 30 or 40 years, right? So 1987, you have a crash. The plunge protection team steps in. That was a blip on the radar, but that was a little contraction, a little tremor, right? So then you had all the loose money policy of the late 1990s. You had the globalization that was taking place, that, shipping jobs overseas, reduce the inflationary pressures that would normally take place. And that just sets this euphoric backdrop for the U.S. markets. Well, coming into the year 2000, you've got an individual on CNBC that's making fun of Warren Buffett because he was down in 1999 versus the market, and he's too old, he needs to step aside. And then wham, we have this 80% NASDAQ decline. You've got a 47% decline in the S&P. Well, I think that was a birth pain, right? So we have that birth pain. That's a warning for those. But the problem is a lot of these warnings, it takes so long for it to unfold that we're just too impatient in our global view. Well, what did the government do? They stepped in and said, okay, debt and money will solve our problems. So they drive interest rates to zero, a house for everyone, and then we get this bubble that's in the housing market. So when that comes to an end, it nearly takes the whole financial system down, or at least that's what they tell us, so that they can print more money. And then we've had quantitative easing round 1, 2, 3, 4. I wish I had the chart on my computer so I could pull it up here. But now we're in the everything bubble, and it's impossible to know when this ends. But I want to show one little graph here.
Yeah, let's see it.
The data comes out. So, U.S. fourth quarter GDP was revised, and the consistent theme over the past couple of years is it drops. So it went from 3.3 to 3.2, not a major reduction. But when you get in there and start looking at the details, in September 30th, 2023, the U.S. debt was around 33 trillion, 167 billion. And on December 31st, 2023, at the end of the year last year, it was a little over 34 trillion. So our debt grew basically 2.5 times what our GDP did. So it cost basically $2.50 in debt to grow $1 of GDP. So it's clear that if something doesn't change dramatically, we've reached the point of diminishing returns to where we could be very close to the suddenly part of this. Close maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or we may see issues 6 months from now. At some point, the bond market's going to revolt at this, what was they call it, Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is completely irresponsible. Mm-hmm. So, that just along that debt theme, we think that debt's the answer to everything, and the reality is it's not. If used efficiently, it can be a wise tool. But if you go into debt to buy a bunch of depreciating assets or short-term, borrow $500,000 to take $500,000 in vacations, you're going to have a lot of memories, but you're not going to have much left over after those vacations are finished because you don't have any income to cover the payback of that debt.
This has been we've been on that slippery slope of more debt doing less and less for quite a while, and that would be apparent. And I showed the TCMDO, the total credit market debt outstanding. It's going like this, But GDP, if you put it on the same chart, it's going like this, So they're just growing apart from each other. That's a visual representation of more and more to get less and less, per unit out of the whole thing. Eventually, that breaks at some point. We all know that. We all know that. And so the question is, how do you get positioned for that? How's it going to break? When is unknowable. Mm-hmm. But I think it's responsible, the most responsible thing you can do, because you can't know when. And you can't really even assess the risk properly because who knows? It's rules get rewritten all the time. But it's right. Like you said, it's the same reason you own fire insurance. I don't buy fire insurance the day before my house is going to burn down. Like, I don't know that, right? Unless I'm an arsonist or something, right? So, right. So I shouldn't know that, right?
You shouldn't know that.
I should not know that. Nobody should. So, but the point is that since you can't know when, you have to act as if it could be any time.
That's right.
I don't know any other way to do this myself. We know this is going to end at some point. We just know it is.
We do know it's going to end, and that kind of reminds me. We're in the midst of the market euphoria here, and Goldman Sachs has got a fund flow guru, Scott Rubner, and he had a report that was released here recently, and he stated that equities have entered a period of, quote, entered a period of euphoria, which we can basically see that. You look at all the calls on the Bitcoin space, the Magnificent Six now. Tesla's struggling a little bit, so you would consider them the Magnificent Six, but still they're garnering the large majority of the money that's coming into the market, and it is euphoria. And of course, he adds in his note that, quote, it's proved impossible to call the top, and analysts are upgrading their year-end price targets by the day, given the Goldilocks and soft landing narrative in the market. So my thought is his argument is we could be entering a blow-off phase, or maybe we're already there. Somebody's going to get lucky. There's people out there. There's an individual that I get frustrated with over the years, because every year they're calling the market top, and if the market doesn't top, they close that company down, start another one, and start a whole bunch of other newsletters. So somebody's going to get lucky in picking that top. But frankly, there just isn't a catalyst at this time right now for a potential sell-off, and the market participants are just unwilling to pay for hedges. So that reminds me of a quote by Jay Paul Getty, and he stated, "Buy when everyone else is selling, and hold until everyone else is buying." And he goes on to say that's not just a catchy slogan; it's the very essence of successful investing. So, depending upon your circumstances, if you have a plan, and most people don't have a plan, most people don't know exactly how much of a return that they need or what allocation that they need to be successful over the long term. A lot of times they'll just get concerned and they go all in CDs, right? Well, that's good in the short run, but if your income levels are too high for your assets and you're going to run out of money before you run out of life, that's not a good place to be in. So if you've got a good plan together and you look at it, hey, maybe you've got some stocks that you participated in, not a recommendation. You need to talk to your advisor, just educational thought process. You got to think about this. Harvest some of those gains right now. You're not going to pick the top. And so what if you leave a little bit of money on the table if you've had enough gains ahead of schedule to be able to get yourself out of debt, right? Or maybe you've got enough gains inside your portfolio to where you're already out of debt. And there's enough money in there if you sweep it off the top that you can go buy yourself a farm or an extra property that's outside of a city if that's where you are and you had to because of something happened that you could move to that location and prep. So this is a period of time where investors and individuals need to know their plan. They need to know why they're investing in a certain manner, because if you're investing strictly for greed, that's where you're going to get in trouble. But if you look at your assets where you're prudent, okay, I'm not chasing the greed game. I'm not trying to keep up with my brother-in-law. I had a client make a comment to me the other day. He says, man, this is an easy environment. I know 3 of the biggest idiots that I've ever met in my life, and they're making money hand over fist. He said, last time I saw that was 2007. So not saying people making money hand over fist or that, but we all know that type of person, right? It's like they're gambling and they don't know that they're gambling. So if you know your situation, then you can be prudent with the assets that you have and buy some insurance. Take these euphoric market as an opportunity to do what Warren Buffett teaches you to do, Jesse Livermore, all the legendary investors of the past. You want to pull some cards off the table when everybody's begging to buy your stocks from you. And we're in a period of time right now where I think it's a period of grace, and it may last until the summer, that investors have the opportunity to make some wise decisions to set themselves in a position to where they can survive that volatility and thrive in that volatility whenever it arrives.
Yeah, I heard Warren Buffett talk recently, or I read something he said. I didn't hear him talk, but he said that reviewing things. He said Coca-Cola and Amex, 2 of his best holdings. He loves them because they've just got this market share and they are what they are. And he said that long time ago, he's already gotten 100% of his investment money back in dividends from these companies. And that's what investing is. So that's why, people are like, oh, you just don't get it, Chris. AI is going to change the world. I'm like, yeah, but if you're paying 40 times sales for a company, you're going to get hosed. I am sorry. There's just no possible way that you can put even together the most bullish spreadsheet ever of how they take over the universe, without that sort of backfiring on you. So now you're not investing, you're speculating. You're speculating on the idea that you're going to be able to sell it to somebody else for a higher price than you bought it for. That's a different question. I'm okay with that. You want to be a blackjack player? That's fine. But investing is what Warren Buffett does. So do you know what Warren Buffett is up to? What's he doing? Is he piling cash up, or is he buying right now? What's he doing?
So one of the things that I always tell people, we run a value stock strategy, right? So we run it on the basic premise of what Buffett does, but we do run a risk managed approach to it. So it's completely different, but in the same kind of ballpark. But one thing that amazes me about Buffett is his discipline, right? He is a disciplined investor. He's calm when the markets are crazy. Whether they're crazy to the downside, he's calmly buying, and when they're crazy to the upside, he's calmly selling. So when you look at, going back to that presentation I had just a minute ago, Buffett, okay, this is Berkshire Hathaway cash and short-term investments. So they've been steadily rising since over the past 10 years, and then they dropped a lot during the 2022 market sell-off. So he took advantage of that 20% market decline and then has been raising cash into this rally, and look how rapidly that they've been building cash. Now, I read a headline, and I haven't had the time. This weekend, I'm going to sit down and read his report because his report just came out. And he basically said the era, if I remember correctly, the era of, fantastic returns is over. That it's going to take a lot of, I'm summarizing the article, it's going to take a lot of hard work and patience and discipline to be successful. So when you look at this, you've got the most respected and successful investor. Honestly, now I think Nancy Pelosi's portfolio has beat Buffett now, but that's a completely different situation, I would argue. Sorry, I couldn't help it, Chris. But what he's doing right now is exactly what he quoted 14 years ago. And I can't remember the quote exactly, but he says, to be successful in investing, it's quite boring. Sell when everybody else is buying, because if you fire all of your bullets, I'm adding that because he says if you fire all your bullets, you have nothing to buy with when the market goes down. So when you look at this, he is disciplined and practicing what he's preaching. So here we have the most successful investor in our lifetime that's still actively investing in the market. And what's he doing into this euphoric rally? He's raising cash and he's building his ammunition. He's building his cash available so that whenever things come apart, he's going to do what he did in 2001, 2002, 2003 and go put that to work, and he's going to buy these companies that these speculators are puking, or they're forced to puke and sell out. So when everybody throws out the baby with the bathwater, he's going to be there to rescue the baby and continue to build his reputation and his returns.
Will you pull that back up again? Because I see a lot in that chart. I would just want to talk this through really quickly. So the wiggles look like quarters to me. Each.
Oh, this is quarterly. I apologize. So this is quarterly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, quarterly. It says so at the top. So what I see here is from the second quarter of 2022, 0 drawdowns. So they've just been accumulating cash since the second half of 2022. So that's half of 22, all of 2023, and here into the first quarter of 2024. Just like, nope, nothing to buy here right now. What's interesting is this probably starts, it looks, if I'm guessing, probably second quarter 2014 is my best guess, squinting at this.
Yes, you're right.
You see
this is 10 years from this quarter.
Yeah, so every other year, it's going up, it's going down, it's wiggle, but there was that one spot there from, looks like about 2019, end of 2018, up through all of 2019, into 2020. So even when COVID happens, there was a little dip there in 2020, but not much. And then you're right, they did a lot of buying there in that first quarter of 2022 on that dip, and then just been hanging ever since. But you can see it's like this is discipline, right? They're sometimes buying, sometimes accumulating cash. It's going up, it's going down, and they have been sitting on their hands for a year and a half here, just sitting on them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
And that 2019 is that was also a year I was screaming loudly. Most people forget this because COVID came and then we got amnesia. But 2019 in September we had this repo market accident. There were like popping rivet sounds. Overnight lending rates went up to 10.5% at one point. It was just like crazy. That was a great environment. I was advising people to step back right around there. I was saying that this is confusing. So all I need to do is look at this chart and just say, and I'll follow this guy, because this is the correct way, I think, to be looking at things.
It is.
It makes sense to me.
It is. It's patient. He's doing exactly what's caused him to be successful. And, and this is an overly simple analogy. Coca-Cola has been in the portfolio, but the way I explain it, if there's 100 college football teams, for example, modern portfolio theory is going to spread your money between number 1 to 100. And the only time that you're supposed to rebalance it is if you get 10% out of weight. The corporations are going to go, oh, we'll rebalance quarterly because it makes you feel good that they're doing something. But the reality is you set your parameters and you don't do anything. It doesn't matter under that strategy, your traditional Wall Street modern portfolio theory strategy, if you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that the markets are going to go down 50% next year, or there's 2 nukes in the air headed towards, there's no sell mechanism. There's no lower the risk, right? To go towards the Warren Buffett analogy on value, his strategy is to focus on the number of teams 90 through 100, right? So they do the research, they invest into those teams that have the greatest likelihood. And then if they get up into the top 10, oversimplified analogy, but just to give people an idea, that's where he's going to sell them. And all the studying that I've done over Buffett over the years and just looking, if those teams bought in number 90 through 100 get into the top 10, that's the trigger to sell and reinvest the funds back down there at the bottom, because that's the euphoria, right? When they get into the top 10, that's when everybody's wanting to buy them. That's when, somebody changes their college football team and starts cheering for whoever's in the, top 10. So, but Coca-Cola, as an example, theoretical example, has kind of stayed around number 50. So he's held it all over that period of time. They haven't been number one. They haven't been back down the bottom. But what's amazing about him is I fully believe, this is just hypothetically speaking, not saying that's what he'd do, but fully believe he is so disciplined that if it hit a sell trigger, he would even walk away from Coca-Cola because of the discipline process that he has. And that's what makes him so impressive. And it's amazing the wisdom that he's shared with individuals. And you go look at that cash hoard that he's building in here. He's doing exactly what he said he's doing in the past, but nobody's paying attention because they think he's boring right now, right?
Well, he's not using AI, so it's totally boring.
Right. Well, and you go back,
Yeah.
even AI reminds me, like Amazon, for example. I mean, that was one of the euphoric stocks in the late 1990s, and in the year 2000, investors just way overpaid. Now, I got to say, as busy as our schedules are, and like with my clothing sizes at my height, I have a hard time finding clothes my correct size in a traditional retail store. So Amazon for me is something that I never used in 2000. I don't think I even used Amazon in 2009, 2010, but I do a lot of purchases on Amazon now just because it's so easy. So that has changed for so many people, the economic purchasing at retail as we know it. Well, there's no doubt that artificial intelligence is going to change over time. But if investor behavior throughout the past is any indication of our human weaknesses, right? This is a problem with our psychology more so than it is our intelligence. We know more now than we ever have before, but still our emotions take control of us. And we get too optimistic. We start speculating. We'll watch our brother-in-law or somebody else that's making ridiculous amounts of money and you don't respect them very much. And then you just can't take it anymore and you jump in. And I think that, I don't know when, but I do believe that we're going to have a repeat again, that at some point in the next 2 to 3 years, investors are either going to learn the same mistake that those in the year 2000 learned, those that speculated on houses in 2007 have learned. And if they don't, it's because nobody has any jobs left and artificial intelligence is doing everything. And that's a completely different problem, because what's caused all the bubbles in the past is the same psychological weaknesses that we have as humans. And this is probably no different this time. We just have no clue when this euphoria is over. That's the most frustrating part, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, listen, to help people feel better, if you do get caught up in the hysteria and all that and lose all your money, you'll when you get to heaven, you'll find Sir Isaac Newton will be there, and you can swap stories. Because do you know his story? He got into the South Sea bubble, which was this magnificent stock bubble back in the 1700s, right? And so he got in on that thing, and then he got out, right? And he made a killing. But then he's going to parties, and it's still roaring on, and people are talking about it, and I'm going to guess some pretty girl came up to him and sort of gave him that wrinkly face, "You're not in the South Sea stock?" And he couldn't take it. So he dove back in and lost it all. Like 20,000 pounds he lost it back in the day. I think you could have bought Rhode Island for that amount of money or whatever. I mean, it was like huge. Yeah. So what did he say at the end of that? He said, "I can calculate the motions of planets, but not the madness of men." Right? Like,
yes,
yeah,
that's right.
It's hard. It's a really hard thing. Doesn't matter how smart you are. You can still get caught up.
Well, and I think sometimes the more intelligence someone has, if they're relying on that specifically, it's easier to justify it, right? So he was one of the most intelligent human beings that we've seen throughout history, and all the good that he gave us, but he was still subject to our normal, basic human psychological weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard. It is hard. John Hussman said that, when it comes to bubbles, it's really tough to be a financial manager because your options are you're either a goat, beforehand, or you're a goat afterwards. And I don't mean greatest of all time. I mean, a goat, right? Like,
Yeah.
people are yelling at you for not participating, or they're yelling at you for not having them gotten them out, in time. And it's a really hard position to be in. Sometimes you just got to stick with your guns and know what you know.
Well, and,
So-
and we're fortunate from that standpoint right now because we've adapted over the years to play the game by the rules that are forced upon us. Now, we're not 100% allocated right now, but we used a lot of the market weakness last year to deploy some capital. So we don't have anybody that's too frustrated right now, but I can tell you there's an individual that's here locally that in 1998 managed, I think it was $200 million. By 2000, he said all of his friends had fired him, all of his family had fired him. He'd go to the grocery store and people would look at him and he's just like, you guys are crazy, pay attention to history. So I think he went down to like 150 million, if I remember correctly. Well, by the time the 2003 crash occurred, right, those that had stayed with him, he had redeployed capital, sidestepped 2008 and retired with something like 1.2, 1.3 billion dollars that, and he just laughed. He said, that's just the pain that you have to pay to be able to advise people correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to be willing to stand in that gap. And if they fire you, they fire you. You can't be all things to all people. If you don't do your job and educate people, then what good is your fee for, right? So I remember him sharing that and just, every now and then he'll call and check on me and say, hey, I hadn't heard from him yet, so I guess he doesn't think that the market's that irrational right now. But, it's hard to imagine that this could go on for 2 or 3 or 4 more years. It's possible. Now, one of the things I'm starting to see talking around the edges of the market is, saying, hey, this is 1995 and this is going to be a 5-year run, right? Because artificial intelligence has brought some productivity expansion in. That's hard to imagine, but you can't completely rule that out because you have no way of knowing when this thing's going to end. But if you have rules in place, you have decision points in place, and you've got a strategy that can help you guide, it's kind of like a pilot, right? We can either fly by the seat of our pants or we can use our instruments. And if it's sunshiny and bright and everything's great, then we don't have to rely upon those instruments. But every time that I land a plane, I'm on a plane, I don't fly a plane. Every time I'm on a plane that lands in a storm where I don't even see the runway until after we land, I'm really glad that pilot's instrument rated.
Yeah. I'm thinking of that movie scene from Dirty Harry, Do you feel lucky, punk? Did he fire 5 shots or 6, Clint Eastwood talking to that guy, right? So I agree in principle with the people who say this argument. I can't disagree with it. Listen, it's concerning. Maybe the markets should correct, but the Fed won't allow it. They'll step in. They got our back. They've had our back the whole way through this. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't again. Okay. But have they fired 5 shots or 6, right? Because against that, what you have to worry about is there a loaded chamber out there that could include a more expanded war with Russia that could go very pear-shaped very quickly. I don't know if most people know this, but Europe's very restive, and the people over there are getting, particularly the farmers, are. It's not reported here much, but they are very unhappy with the direction of things, and that can create its own issues. And as well, Yemen has still totally blocked off the Red Sea for certain transits of certain things. Let me see, where did I put that?
Yeah,
I'm sure I put it.
That disappeared from the news here lately. So unless I'm going to search for it, it's hard to hear anything about what Yemen's been doing lately.
Yeah, well, I can show you what they've been up to because again, here, let's look at this very quickly. Again, from Andreas Steno Larsen, these are weekly shipments of LNG transiting the Suez Canal up at the north end of the Red Sea there. And you can see it's normally 35 to 40. It's gone to 0, right? 0. Now, that makes sense because LNG tankers are among the more explodey variety of ships out there. But it's gone to 0. And here's why that matters. So all of Europe's getting a lot of its LNG. It's loaded up in the Middle East, typically Qatar, and it goes on these tankers and then it goes up and through. Now, because they can't go through the canal, they have to go around Africa, right? That adds, let's say, 12, 13, 14 days onto the trip. The problem with LNG is it's a really cold substance. It's like minus 200 plus degrees Fahrenheit, right? And to keep it cold, they actually use some of the product as they're shipping it. It boils off, which evaporatively cools the stock, but then they take the boil off and they run compressors with it, right? So it's boiling off about 1% a day. So as soon as you close that canal down and you have to ship that stuff around Africa, you're losing 10 to 14%, maybe 15% of that cargo due to time.
That's expensive. Very expensive.
It's very expensive. It's taking something already expensive and adding a minimum of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14% onto that. And then that just becomes friction in the gears of Europe. And next thing you know, farmers are unhappy. These things all connect like this, right? And so I'm just saying that, yes, the Fed may try and bail us out again, but there's chance, particularly in the Middle East and around Eastern Europe, that things could come. And like, I don't see that risk being factored into people's thinking in the prices, into this euphoria yet.
Well, I think it's complacency. I mean, Chris, it's like, at first everybody thought that the Russia and Ukraine war was going to spill over, and then all of a sudden war breaks out in the Middle East, between Israel and Gaza. And then all of a sudden it just that was yesterday's news. The markets have just completely, matter of fact, they surged on the large majority, not initially on the, well, I can't remember exactly what they did now. I'm second guessing myself if they didn't move on Russia actually entering Ukraine. But the reality is the markets have ignored all that. And if the Fed has that much power, what I get concerned about is we learned during the lockdowns just how tightly our global just-in-time inventory is, right? And then
Very
all
tight.
of the supply chain disruptions and the shortages that we had during the periods of time, and that seems to have settled itself down now. But you've got that potential taking place right now with what Yemen's doing, but what if there were disruptions in several other areas of the global economy because of expanded wars? Now that's a wild card that the market's just refusing to consider right now.
Yep. This is pretty impressive too. Let me just show this really quick. This is from Sven Henrik, Northman Trader on Twitter, showing this is a chart of multiple expansion. And here, if I don't, is my little, it's showing up. This is that mysterious thing through November starting 2023. But look at this multiple expansion. Isn't that astonishing? So this is the price earnings multiple. It bottomed out at just somewhere around 21 here, I would guess, ish. Mm-hmm. Right? And now it's all the way up. What's the highest number up here? 26, 20, it's probably 27-ish. So 5 full points of multiple expansion. 5 points in a couple of months. Okay, Paul, you have gray hair like I do. Explain to the newbies out there. Like I spent whole decades where it didn't move like more than a couple points. Like this is a huge multiple expansion. Like 5. We're paying 5 extra points on price for earnings. I mean, that's an incredibly complacent move right there. It's astonishing.
Well, I mean, just to simplify that for the listeners out there, when you buy a stock, the only thing you're paying for is the future earnings of a company. And that price to earnings ratio tells you how much you're paying for those future earnings. So all of a sudden, since November, it's worth paying 5 times more for the future earnings of those companies on what? Just the fact that the Federal Reserve is going to, potentially cut interest rates, which they haven't done yet. The artificial intelligence assumption is, you could justify a little bit higher multiples if this artificial intelligence allows, massive productivity expansion by these companies. But that's still speculative at this point, right? It's just still speculative. We know it's going to make a difference, but how big a difference is it going to make? And how good's it going to be if nobody has a job because you've got artificial intelligence doing anything? So that's a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
There's got to be a fine balance in there somewhere. So
I'm looking at it now on a smaller screen. It's over 27. So again, for people who aren't as familiar with it, like I like buying things that have a PE of 5, not that it's just expanded by 5, right? It's a totally different thing. But what that means is that Today, on average, to buy the SPX, if you bought it as an index, you're saying I'm willing to wait 27.1 years just for the SPX to earn it back. I don't know what they're going to pay me in dividends. It's a fraction of that, but I'm paying for that future stream of earnings, and some of it they'll pay back, some of it they'll put into R&D so they can expand and grow, and that all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But I'm going to wait 27 years for the average company to earn back what I just handed to the markets.
That's right.
Things really have to go super well. Like you said earlier, there's not a lot of buffer in that. There's not a lot of room for error in that particular story. Things have to all go chef's kiss perfectly for that to pencil out.
It has to go perfect, and I think I have this slide in that presentation, so I can go back and take a look at it. No, I don't have the price-to-earnings ratio here. Market capitalization is kind of similar, but it takes us back to the year 2000, right,
Mm-hmm.
where the market was euphoric, multiples were really high, investors were paying at the same levels that we are now on most of your price to earnings multiples, if I remember correctly. So give me some a little margin for error there. But the reality is the S&P 500 went sideways for 14 years and the NASDAQ for another 13, 14 years because investors just paid way too much for the earnings of the company. They were just too optimistic and too euphoric. But the interesting thing is, Chris, with the Magnificent Seven leading like they are, I'm not completely bearish on the whole market, right? Because there are very good overlooked companies that are out there right now. There are very good and affordable, lower price to earnings ratio indexes of countries that are supplying the goods that we need, right? They're supplying all of the commodities and everything that we need to function in society like we function, to build our cars, to build our roads, to build our bridges. And they're so ridiculously underpriced right now, you don't know when it's going to turn. They're just the unpopular kids. And the best way I can explain it is, it's kind of like back in high school, you've got the kids that are, the athletics and, there's not all those that's the best days of their lives, but there's a lot of kids that high school was the best that they had because they didn't take the time to study then. That seems to be where they are right now. This may be the best of time for these companies. They're still going to be leaders in the future, but as far as stock performance, and then there's these others that when you look 2, 3, 4 years from now, they're the ones that are going to be the leaders and everybody's chasing them then and paying these large multiples. So as investors, what we need to do is to look at a long-term picture, pay attention, have emotional control and discipline. If you want to have a little bit in there, that's fine, but make sure it's money that, it's not enough to wipe you out. There's serious money and then there's play money. And take your serious money and invest into these sectors that we know are going to be critical for the longevity of our economy, and they're underpriced just because they're not popular right now. We don't want to invest on a popularity contest all the time. If we invest into what's going to be good 4 or 5 years from now, then we'll own the popular stocks when everybody else wants them, but we purchased them before everybody was paying these ridiculous premiums.
So, Paul, you think there's value investing to be done in this frothiness? There's places you can find value still?
I do. There are sectors that look very attractive. Now, here's the wild card, and this is the one reason I would say even those, to an extent, you have to treat them like grandma's cookie jar. So I think I've told the analogy before. My grandmother hated you to eat her cookies before you had her dinner, and if I always played the game, I'd stick my hand in the cookie jar and she'd smack it real hard, because I had to make sure I ate dinner, then I could have the cookies. The problem is there's really attractive value stocks, and they're still going to have some volatility because whenever this bubble pops, there's going to be a lot of debt that has to be paid off, a lot of margin calls that are going to come, and investors are going to sell whatever they can sell to be able to cover those debts. So if you go back to like 2007, gold peaked around $1,000 an ounce. And then I think it was in mid-2008 when the worst part of the liquidation took place. Gold dropped to about, I think it was somewhere between 600 and 700 at bottom. And then it took off to its ultimate peak back then in 2012 or 13 around $1,900 an ounce. But the thing is it had a short-term drop and an immediate move to new highs. A lot of these value stocks are going to have those type of performance and reaction more than likely. Every now and then you're going to have something that's going to go straight up because investors just realize how attractive it is. But there's a lot of value out there. And yeah, maybe it still goes through a 10 or 15% decline, but that's a big difference between a 30, 50 or 60% decline, right? And especially if it recovers it real quickly. So I do see a lot of value out there. High dividend yields. Dividend yields provide you a little bit of safety. There is a lot of opportunity out there if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and go look for it.
So I'm trying to find this. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, all right. Just looking at this, very quickly, you probably will know this because you're a pro. Maybe, I don't know. This one surprised me. So this is across many, many years. This goes back to the 90s, I think, here. But what is this stock? Can you name it in 1 second?
Oh, that would be Qualcomm. I can't tell the
No.
years on there. Sorry. NVIDIA.
No, it's close. That's Abercrombie and Fitch.
Oh, I should have known that. I should have known that because that's actually been on my watch list.
But why
I
is
tried, guys,
Abercrombie
I
and
tried.
Fitch like, woo, rocket ride? I'm like, what? Don't they make somewhat boring clothing? I mean, I don't, whatever. It just, that one surprised me. I was not ready for that one, So when I talk about frothiness, I'm like, clothing? And it's gone nowhere for decades, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then that at the end there, I don't know. Anyway, that's part of my thesis for why I'm like, that's odd.
All right, so I got to tell you something here that is very humbling to me when it comes to Abercrombie and Fitch. So we filter down through, and we've got two stocks that are coming into our investment portfolio strategy, and one of them is Abercrombie and Fitch, and this was back in November, December. So Dylan and I argued for a full day. He's like, I like retail. And I'm like, I don't like retail right now. I don't like retail. And, and they were literally together. And it was a coin toss. And Abercrombie and Fitch didn't win the coin toss. So that was a painful one. But I have been watching that stock. Every day I've been sitting looking at it going, my goodness, what a move. So had it not been a coin toss, we would have added it. But when all things being equal, there was a tie. I was like, I like this one better. He's like, I like this one better. I said, well, let's toss a coin. So,
all right.
Sorry, guys. Bad coin toss.
Yeah. Bad coin toss. All right. Well, I'm looking at my clock here. I know you've got a meeting coming up. So thank you so much for your time here today. Anybody, again, who wants to have a consult with Paul and his amazing team at Kuiper Wealth Management, come to Peak Financial Investing. Very simple form. Kicks out an email. You will be contacted. And Paul just been hearing great things. So about people's experience with y'all. And so thank you for doing what you do. Thanks for your time today.
It's our honor, and it's always a pleasure. So look forward to next time, Chris.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, Chris Martinson. I'm the CEO of Peak Prosperity and also Peak Financial Investing. And after watching that, you're probably wondering, well, what do I do with my money? Look, you both deserve and need somebody who can talk to you about what's really going on in this world, understand the situation as it is, not be steering you towards certain things that don't make sense for you or just keep you in a game that's already ended. Look, if you want to talk to somebody about the petrodollar declining or what is happening with gold or which sectors are actually the best ones to be in, given what the Federal Reserve is up to or the federal government, you deserve to talk to somebody who can answer those and has a few gray hairs and has been there through some of the economic cycles because, hey, we're in another economic cycle, so it's good to have that experience. Fortunately, at Peak Financial Investing, what we do is we go out and we scour and we look for the very best firms out there who satisfy one thing above all else. They've got great experience coupled to great customer service. So if you want to come by peakfinancialinvesting.com, there's a very simple form you can fill out, just a few fields. You hit send. What happens is an email gets triggered out. It goes to an endorsed firm of ours. You will get an email back. You can then set up a phone call for a 30 to 45 minute free, no obligation, no pressure call to find out if this firm is a good fit for you and to find out if you're a good fit for the firm. It has to go both ways. And if all that matches up, this will be one of the best things that could happen to you this year. So please come by peakfinancialinvesting.com. Very simple process. We would love to help you if we can. Thanks very much.